As we come to the Word of God just now, I'm going to actually read to us the whole passage. And as I do that, as you hear it or as you follow along in your own Bibles in Matthew 27, verse 32, I want you to have this kind of question bouncing around your brain, right? What do you see? No matter how many times you've heard this story, as you witness a man get murdered, what do you see? Do you see weakness? Do you see irrelevance? Or do you see something else? All right, Matthew 27, starting in verse 32. As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. There they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they'd crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots. And sitting down, they kept watch over him there. Above his head, they placed the written charge against him. This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. 2 rebels were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you're the Son of God." In the same way, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders mocked him. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross and we'll believe in him." He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him. For he said, "I'm the Son of God." In the same way, the rebels who were crucified with him also heaped insults on him. What do you see? Jesus has been tried in a corrupt court. He's been beaten to the point that you can barely recognize him. He's had a crown of thorns formed and forced onto his head. He's been dressed in mockery as a king. And I want us just to place ourselves on that hill just outside Jerusalem as you see this Jesus led out in front of you. He's too weak to carry his own cross. He's been led towards you up this hill, where before your very eyes you see him crucified, nailed to a bit of wood, and dying in agony. What do you see? I think if we were there in that crowd, we would see what everyone saw. The Jesus who'd promised so much now dies in pain. The Jesus who'd claimed so much is now crucified. Everyone in our passage who witnessed Jesus dying, well, they see weakness. They see embarrassment. They see irrelevance. And in seeing weakness, they see someone worth mocking. I think that's the approach to weakness that we find in Gracemount and Edinburgh today, don't we? Why did that TikTok of the blind guy getting pushed into the Union Canal go so viral around TikTok? Why do we love to laugh at Rangers Football Club for having an absolute shocking start to the season? Why, when someone in this community gets battered, is our instinct to have nothing to do with them? When we see weakness, our instinct is to mock it. That's exactly what's happening in Matthew 27. Everyone, right? Leaders, criminals, soldiers, randoms passing by, see Jesus in weakness, and they join the mockery. And I think Matthew majors on this mockery really deliberately, because contained within the insults thrown at Jesus, ironically, is his true identity. Right? It doesn't matter how long you've been a Christian or whether this is all brand new to you. We have to get this right this morning. Because Matthew is saying if we mistake what is going on here, we will join the mockery, instead of marveling at who Jesus is and what he's done for mockers just like us. And so as we walk through these verses, we're going to explore the insults thrown at Jesus and see his identity that's contained within them. And the first thing we see is where everyone mocks Jesus as a king. We're to marvel this morning at the king. If you were here last week, we saw just before this section, the soldiers overseeing Jesus' trial and death start to mock him. Hail the King of the Jews, they said. They dressed him up mockingly as a king. They pretended to worship him. And now, having brought him up the hill, we see in our section, in verse 34, they give him wine mixed with gall. They crucify him. They divide up his clothes by casting lots. And they place a sign above his head which says, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Everything has been set up in this scene to mock the king. When the soldiers offer him something to drink, they're not being kind, they're being cruel. They give a dying man something so minging he wants nothing to do with it. The king's clothes are divided up like a cheap hand in a casino. What kind of king is this? Taunted by the very soldiers people thought he'd come to conquer. Because Jesus, actually being this promised king, has been a pretty major theme right through this book of Matthew you've been walking through. Remember, the wise men, when they came to see the baby Jesus, they said, "Where is the one who's been born the King of the Jews?" in chapter 2. Jesus himself has taken promises from the Old Testament and applied them to himself when he says, "See, the king has come to you," in chapter 21. He said he's going to sit as a king on his glorious throne. And just last week, Pilate has looked him square in the eyes and said, "Are you the King of the Jews?" That's what's mockingly written above his head for all to see. And yet this morning we are to see this is exactly who Jesus is. Jesus' kingship flips the scripts on our expectation. Where everyone expected strength, the true king suffers. Because it's not just the soldiers who are at it here. The spiritual leaders of the day mock him for being a pretend king in verse 41. In the same way, the guys being executed beside him join in. Matthew wants us to see this is Jewish people and non-Jewish people. This is centurions and chief priests and criminals all joining in one voice to mock the royal pretender. And I think Matthew uses the breadth of the abuse to show that we're no better. Right? We might not have been there 2,000 years ago screaming abuse. We may even be tempted to think just because we're in church, we're not the kind of people who mock Jesus now. Yet the Bible's crystal clear. We all have a problem with misplaced kingship. We fundamentally want to be in charge. We fundamentally want to reject rule over us. King Charles comes to Edinburgh early in the year. And what do the people of Scotland scream as he walks down the Royal Mile? Not my king. What's the tweet that's trending around X at the moment in response to Trump? No kings. And that is also the message that our heart shouts at Jesus' kingship. Every selfish thought, every unkind word, every time we act out of self-interest, we are adding our insults to the kingship of Jesus. We're saying, I want nothing to do with your rule. It's sin. And the Bible tells us it makes a mockery of the King of Kings. Later, we're going to sing a song that has a line in it that says, "Ashamed, I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers." God's word here is meant to kind of pin all of us. And yet here we this morning, all incriminated, are all invited to see that there is no king like King Jesus. A colleague of mine was at a Highland Games recently, like a really posh one up north. He's French, he loves all that stuff. And there, the actual King of Britain was there, Charlie Boy. And even though my colleague could see him, he obviously couldn't get anywhere near him, right? Security was everywhere. Royalty was removed from French riffraff. Do you see the difference here? King Jesus, creator, sustainer, ruler, willingly laid aside his coming crown to put on the humiliation of a crown of thorns. He forgoes his royal robes to hang naked in death in front of the humiliation of all. You see, Jesus could have come as conquering king. He could have come wielding his sword of judgment and deservingly slaying every one of his enemies. You and I. But instead, the true king who knew the depths of your sin dies as a criminal so that people like us in the mocking crowd might receive the blessing of being his beloved subjects. And when that day comes, when Jesus' kingship will be known by everyone, he will say to all who believe, she's one of mine. He belongs to me. That's our King. Do you see our King and do you marvel? I think there's a danger, particularly if being a Christian for a while, that you see Jesus die on a cross and in a kind of Sunday switch way you say, isn't it nice? King Jesus died for my sins. Now what's for lunch? Instead of humbly praying that we at GCC this morning would be so captivated by how Jesus displays his kingship that we submit everything to him. You see, to marvel is never just a head thing, it's always a heart thing. It's never just a knowledge thing, it is always a praise thing. When we see Jesus, truly see him, when we grasp anything of who he is and what he's done, our response for the words of our mouth and the actions of our lives are to be ones of praise to King Jesus. And if you know him as your King, when the same sin tempts you tomorrow, when the weight of the world just pours back in as you leave Valley Park, you can know deep in your soul the freedom that comes from being able to say, I'm not in charge anymore. I belong to and I am praising this King, King Jesus. He knew the depravity of your heart. And if you're following him this morning, he died for you. So he alone deserves your worship and obedience this week. Do you marvel at the King? Or are you still mocking in the crowd? Right, they mock him as a king, but it's not the only thing they're slagging him for. Secondly, while they mock him as a powerless son, we're to marvel at the all-powerful Son of God. Read with me again from verse number 38. 2 rebels were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, you who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you're the Son of God. In the same way, the chief priests, teachers of the law, and the elders mocked him. He saved others, but they said, but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him. Everyone is slating Jesus for being the Son of God. In their insults, they're basically saying, since you're suffering like this, there is no way that you can be the Son. If you were God's Son, why doesn't he just step in and rescue you? No all-powerful dad would let their son die like that. And the accusation goes further. They're saying, if you were truly the Son of God, you'd have the power to save yourself. Why don't you show it to us for all to see now? You might remember, this is the exact same taunt that the devil gave Jesus in chapter 4. He's saying, if you're the Son, act like it. And yet, once again, we see that Jesus' sonship is most clearly seen in his suffering, where he looks helpless, exposed, and defeated. Matthew wants us to see clearly this morning that even bloodied and beaten, Jesus is the all-powerful Son, and this is exactly God's plan. Right, we've got to get this in our heads. Pilate is not in charge. The soldiers are not in charge. The rowdy crowd is not in charge. God is. And this moment where his Son looks most powerless is the moment his power will be most clearly displayed to the world. Remember, this is the very same Jesus who just a chapter ago, having been arrested, said to his followers, "Don't fight back. Don't you know I could command 12 legions of angels to come to my help?" This is the King, the royal Son, the one who gave every breath to the people who use it to hurl insults back at him. Matthew wants us to see that Jesus is dying here willingly. He could have come down at any moment. He has the power to. I think that's why Matthew includes the bit about the soldiers casting lots for Jesus' clothes. He's actually making direct reference to Psalm 22, written hundreds and hundreds of years before, which now show that they are identifying Jesus as God's suffering King, to which the Old Testament was pointing towards. Here's a couple of verses from Psalm 22 and see if it sounds familiar to what we read. All who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their heads. He trusts the Lord, they say. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. They divide my clothes among them, and they cast lots for my garment. Words written hundreds and hundreds of years before are being fulfilled in the death of Jesus. It's like Matthew is taking all these threads right through the Bible and showing how they weave together in the death of Jesus. It's like he's saying everything that his gospel has been pointing towards and building to is being unfurled for us in this moment. Do you see? Jesus alone has all the power. The crowd, the leaders, the passers-by, the criminals, us in Gracemount Community Church this morning, we had no power to deal with the problem of our sin. Jesus, though, he alone had the power to resist Satan's temptation as a man. He alone lived in perfect relationship with his Father. And so as he hangs and bears the punishment from God for our sin, he alone has the power to once and for all defeat it. The power that sin had to whisper in your ear, you will never be good enough. Defeated. The power of the guilt of your actions in the past can be lifted. The death sentence that hung over you removed. Because Jesus is the true Son, the all-powerful one. Please, don't be fooled. Don't be distracted. If you think true power is shown in being the big man on this scheme, you've got it all wrong. If you think true power is being respected even by people in this room, you've got it wrong. If you think true power is making enough of yourself in this life, you've got it wrong. True power is shown in the death of Jesus, God's Son. The power of the Roman Empire, nowhere to be seen today. All the power that you might gain in this life will pass away, and only the power of Jesus will remain. He is the one who at the cross, having defeated the power of sin, is now the one who reigns resurrected in power incomprehensible. And through the power of his death, God the Father now welcomes you, if you are trusting in him, as a son or daughter. That's why Jesus can say he'd rebuild the temple in 3 days in verse number 40. Because it's in Jesus' death and resurrection that we now can meet with God as his children. Marvel the power of Jesus, the true Son. This is a power that is stronger than temptation or abuse or addiction. This truth is the power to allow you to face another week with all it might bring. This is the power to give you certainty of a future with the risen Jesus. And it is the power to know that whatever you have done in rebellion against God, its price has been paid. That is true power. Because it has nothing to do with any power that you could produce. It is the power of Jesus, the Son of God, at the cross in your place. In a few verses' time, I think Andy will get to next week. Matthew will underline Jesus' sonship for us with a kind of thick Sharpie pen. As a battle-hardened centurion sees this all go down, he will stand there and say, surely this man was the Son of God. Is that what you see as Jesus dies? They mock him for being king. We're to marvel at the true king. They mock him for being the Son. We're to marvel at the all-powerful Son of God. And lastly, they mock him for not saving himself. Marvel this morning that Jesus died to save others. Jesus hangs, fast approaching his death, and the abuse just keeps piling up. He saved others, verse 42. But he can't save himself. He trusts in God, verse 43. Let God rescue him now if he wants him. Why does this all-powerful king, the royal Son of God, not save himself? Well, so he could save others. If you're a Christian this morning, it's so he could save you. Jesus takes the punishment we deserved from God. He doesn't save himself so that you might be saved from the judgment your sin deserves. There is no other way. If Jesus saves himself in this moment, on you, the death sentence falls. That's how offensive our sin is. It requires death. Without Jesus' death in our place, there could be no blood of the covenant for the forgiveness of sins. Chapter 26. No meeting place for man and God in his resurrected body. Verse number 40. And no good news to tell the world until he returns. Chapter 28. We've already seen how this section shows us that Psalm 22 is pointing to and fulfilled in Jesus' death. Do you know how that psalm ends? Verse after verse of just foretelling Jesus' suffering comes the most amazing truth. All the ends of the earth will remember and turn to the Lord. All the families of the nations will bow down before him, for dominion belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. Jesus' death wasn't just for people in the Middle East 2,000 years ago. His death would lead to people just like us from every corner of the planet finding salvation for their souls. I don't know. But I reckon those witnessing this go down would have had no idea that Scotland was even a place. And yet, in a scheme in the South Edinburgh, thousands of years later, thousands of miles away, Christians get together every week in a community centre to marvel at Christ and to declare his praise in this place. Why? Because we have been saved by Jesus. Because we can say he hung and faced God's judgment so we don't have to. We can say that God so loved us, his Son was sent to die in our place. We who mocked Jesus, who scoffed at his rule through the death of the Son, have become children of God. Where all kinds of people mocked him, now all kinds of people find salvation by believing in him. Even us, even now. You see, if you're trusting Jesus for the forgiveness of your sins, when God looks at you this morning, he no longer sees the mankiness of your mockery. Instead, he sees the righteousness of Jesus. Marvel at his death in your place. Maybe you sat here, though, and this is all new to you. Maybe you're sitting here and you don't know this Jesus for yourself. Well, please know the salvation we've been talking about is on offer to you. Jesus is so loving that he came to die for people just like you. You can be free from the punishment your mocking of God deserves, and you can be free to enjoy a new life with him. But you need to say sorry for living your own way. You need to submit to this Jesus as King. Don't stay mocking the Lord of all. Because Matthew actually wants to leave us all in absolutely no doubt this morning about what we are seeing. The crowd, the Jewish leaders, the criminals, the soldiers, they don't recognize that actually in their insults, they've got Jesus' identity spot on. Jesus is the true King. Jesus is the all-powerful Son of God. And Jesus did not save himself so that you might be saved.